my pleasure to introduce Don Sutterfield, who, like Andrew Cedardahl and Matt LeClaire, is also on the board of directors of the Secular Student Alliance. By the way, it's a democratic organization, and our elections are in the spring, so if you are interested in being my boss, you should consider running. So I think you're all members because you got a discount on the conference rate by joining. So, and even if you don't want to run, because it is a lot of work, you do get to vote in those elections, and we'll be sending you email about that. Don is one of the most tenacious people that I know. This is, I think, especially the case when it is 4 a.m. and there is a point of philosophical disagreement. Don will talk it out until it is done, or until you have fallen asleep. Which is not to say he's boring, just to saying that he keeps going. He's also a very engaged and humble activist, and has been at this since at least 2002, and has sort of had an interesting journey, as many of our speakers have. But Don used to be part of a traveling road show for Jesus, and he, I don't think, is going to go into that in this evening's talk, but it's a fascinating story, and in the after-hours socializing, I definitely recommend that you hit him up for some of his wacky stories. Please join me in welcoming Don Sutterfield.
Thank you, August. Very kind, very, very kind. So, okay, what I would like to talk with you all about today is how to change the world in 6 easy steps. I believe that with our youthful idealism, there's a high likelihood that many of us here actually believe that we can change the world. And I think that it's true, not just some kind of delusion that we're all under. The means of changing the world I would like to talk about is through political activism. These are 2 images of examples of political activism that I'm very pleased to have been able to be involved in. On the left is the the Godless Americans March on Washington from 2002, about 8 years ago, November. It was a wonderful experience of having thousands of non-theists gathered on the National Mall and hearing great speeches by none other than people like August Brunsman, whose speech about his concern for the state of American education and atheists in it in 50 years is still something that I recall and am inspired by. So on the right, we have something more local, so a bit of a smaller scale kind of event. It is the protest that I was sort of in charge of for Students for Free Thought, of heading up at the State House in Ohio, in Columbus. It's conveniently located for us, on the National Day of Prayer. And we do that annually, pretty much. We miss some years, but we try to do that annually for the last 4 or 5 years. And we'll go and hold signs promoting the National Day of Reason, and showing quotes of founding fathers indicating the contrary of what very many conservative political thinkers would like to have us believe. Okay, so I don't have a lot of time, but I want to go through, no. Okay. I don't want to go through the 10 Qs of political activism. Something much simpler, 3 Ms. Okay, so the motivation that we have to be engaged in political activism is not something that can be taken for granted. Apathy is a huge problem in American political discourse, so finding ways to inspire political activistic inclination is something that's really important for all of us who especially are in sort of embattled sort of social areas, being despised minorities and whatnot. It's good for us to have a little fire lit under us. So we've got our motivation that we want to pay close attention to, our means, and momentum. To start with an issue of motivation, I'm a huge fan of Margaret Mead's quote that we should never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. You don't need to be a member of some national political organization to achieve results. You just have to be committed, inventive, and use your resources effectively. So that was the happy side of the motivation for political activism. This is the sort of less happy side. The state of American political discourse with regard to philosophical worldview is not really good right now. We've got a lot of organizations that galvanize a lot of nonsense into political action. The Christian Coalition has 2.5 million supporters. This is the group led by formerly Pat Robinson, then Ralph Reed, who you may have heard of in connection to the Abramov scandal. He was really tight with that Abramov guy. They had one of the things that the Christian Coalition is noteworthy for is having, years ago, I'm sure they've done much more than this now, but producing 100 million nonpartisan voter guides, which were distributed in places like churches. This is a big problem. Churches aren't supposed to, by means of their tax exemption, be advocating for particular candidates. Christian Coalition comes in and they, slip these voter guides into the Bibles and pews, hand them out at the door, and in an insidious way do exactly what they're not supposed to do: help to influence the outcome of elections in ways that's illegal. So that's the Christian Coalition. Family Research Council is another problem organization. They lobby to outlaw homosexuality, oppose legal abortion, and stem cell research on religious grounds. The Family is a big, important situation. Very recently, they were making headlines for their involvement with law that was proposed in Uganda, which would have made homosexuality a capital offense. They will kill you. So the Family was also, here we are in South Carolina, Mark Sanford, when he had his political issues, sought refuge in the warm embrace of the Icky Icky family, and they provided it. So less political, but more on the social area, an alternative to what we, the SSA, do, Campus Crusade for Christ. Just to give you a sense of scale, $500 million annual revenue. They're not small enemies to our ideological interests. 25,000 missionaries, what they call their full-time staffers, well over 1,000 campus groups, and 50,000 students. So they're marshaling these students and this section of society to promote their own political agenda. And they're not waiting. They are doing all this as much as they can at any point in time. So that's some motivation for you. That's the picture of the scary and the opportunity. As far as means and strategy, we want to consider at what level we want to be politically engaged. You don't have to just be engaged locally. You don't have to just be engaged in worldwide politics, opposing things and bringing attention to issues like blasphemy laws in Ireland or whatever worldwide. And there are legitimate worldwide areas for us to be politically involved, and that can be really exciting. So it's something worth keeping on the radar. But focusing on understanding where your project fits can help you with strategy. So you just want to understand what your goals are, what you're attempting to do. So in terms of means also, there are lots of opportunities for activism. We've got grassroots. I think it's a form of political activism, or blending the notion of social activism and political activism to engage in grassroots things like meme warfare, just trying to counter misconceptions about atheism, about certain political ideas. You can do that at meetings. You can do that through protests. You can do it through tabling. Just really want to confront misinformation. That changes the political landscape. It doesn't necessarily impact policy directly, but in a ripple effect, it really can. Letter writing. So there's this rule of thumb. Politicians, when they receive a phone call, it represents so many constituents. I think it's something like 10 to 50 is like a phone call, because that's a low level of investment. Writing a letter, at least in the past, I don't know how the information age has affected this, but politicians used to think that if they got a letter that wasn't a form letter, that was something someone really had written themselves, that represented about 100 constituents. Yeah, I wouldn't think they would. Letter writing has the awesome benefit of being really convenient. It's something you can do at a meeting. If you have a political topic, you can tailor it to whatever layer of local or state or national or worldwide, and you can find the decision maker who's involved in that issue and get some letter writing done. Lobbying is a really great way to affect political change. Every visit that a politician gets, apparently, is worth about, to the politician, 500 votes. The Secular Coalition for America has a program called Capitol Hill Scholars, which is a young program, but it's ramping up to provide the opportunity for students to intern in DC and visit Capitol Hill, visit politicians, facilitate other visits. So you could go to DC and help out free thought groups from wherever to get in touch with their representative and schedule a meeting, help the meeting to go as well as possible. So it really eases the effort that's involved in doing lobbying, which don't think that you can't go visit your politician. You absolutely can. They're people, and they want to be visited and understand what their constituents are thinking. And they need to hear from us, I think. We're an underrepresented group. The best thing, I think, the best bang for your buck in terms of being politically active is by doing some of this meme warfare. It's kind of an ideological exercise, but encouraging free thinkers to consider seeking elected office, running for school board, running for city council, running for Congress. These are things that we should be doing, and we won't see it happen until our culture encourages it more, I don't think. So incorporating the idea that we can directly impact the political scene by direct involvement is, yeah, I think that's worth like 1 million voters. So, okay. Some political issues we, in general, might want to attend to: corruption in the political process by religious groups, the family, the Christian coalition. That's something that can generally be something you want to pay attention to and look for issues to respond to. Secondarily, government's failure to maintain the wall of separation between the church and state. So the National Day of Prayer is an issue. Prayer breakfasts. If there's a sectarian prayer offered before your city council, you have every right to go and lodge a complaint about the exclusive, divisive nature of having a sectarian prayer offered before, your public representatives are supposed to be representing all of us, including the non-believers. There are some really easy things that you can do to start getting the ball rolling. The Secular Coalition for America, secular.org is their website. They have action alerts where they'll email you information about legal situations that are going on, cases that are going to be brought, problems that may lead to cases being brought. I'm not sure what they're going to have to say about the recent influx of rabid conservatives into all layers, state houses and federal Congress. But it's a good place to get information. Check the society or the Secular Coalition's website. American Atheists has a really active legal wing. Freedom from Religion Foundation does a lot legally. AA and FFRF like to sue folk, so you can find out about who's getting them some sued from those places. Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, I believe it's americansunited.org, is another great source of information about political issues of concern to free thinkers. Another very easy thing to do is to have politically themed meetings, incorporate letter writing campaigns on the topic of the meeting if you can, or it doesn't have to relate to the topic. You can just say, we want to be sure to be active politically. Here is an actual thing we can do. It's kind of the easiest thing you can really get traction on. Supporting the National Day of Reason, I'm a big fan of. You can table at your school. You can have a meeting where the topic is the difference between the National Day of Prayer and a National Day of Reason, the First Amendment issues regarding a National Day of Prayer. Protesting, going to your state house. I mean, if you're here, right down the street, in Columbus, it's very, very convenient, but it's also a great way to get regional cooperation between free thought groups. You can all just converge. If you can network, converge on the state house, make a strong statement against the creep of religious ideology into politics. Promoting the Capitol Hill Scholars Program, talking about the general strategies that we can engage in as free thinkers to change the world, bring about a better world. A very helpful thing is to have a political point person, someone who's going to be a source of ideas for political involvement and also facilitate improvement of ideas and strategizing. It can be an officer level position in your group. You can have a political coordinator. Students for Free Thought right now does have a political coordinator. It's really cool. That person can work with your events coordinator. It can be a function of the events coordinator because you're going to want to plan some events to discuss these issues. Any actions that you get involved in are events that will need some form of coordination. So if you don't have someone who's going to make a great political officer, the events coordinator can do that. Doesn't even have to be an officer. It can be just a member who has a strong interest in political activism. And they would, suggest political meeting topics, opportunities for activism, and see it through. So there's sort of a place to delegate this sort of behavior to. Another, maybe the most important job of a political point person would be to liaison with political groups on campus. You want to be in touch with college Dems, Greens, Republican Party. The SSA doesn't endorse any political philosophy. Any political philosophy that your group happens to have as a majority of members is acceptable. If you've got mad numbers of objectivists who want to vote all Republican for libertarian ideal reasons, that's nothing we have any problem with, so long as it's promoting the core values of the SSA. Some benefits to coordination with political student organizations. You can have a great meeting where you have 3 to 5 representatives of political persuasions come and be a panel for you, take questions, present their summary of their beliefs and interests, and in that way you can really sort of stick it to the representatives of political parties who don't do a good job of representing any of freethinkers' concerns. You can learn, about, your members can learn about political parties that don't get much play in the media. It'd be great to have, an actual communist, a socialist, a green, a libertarian to come and discuss things to sort of depolarize the understanding that people have. You can network, you can join up with groups. College Dems and Republicans are often planning means of activism themselves. You can tag along to that. You can also have networking such that you can funnel people from these groups into activities like letter writing campaigns, protests, so you can often effectively double or triple your representation on a particular project just by getting members of other groups who are more politically interested exclusively. And the greater the number of people who represent a position in general, the greater your impact can be. And that is really all that I have on that. I'm very, very thankful for your time and attention. Please do go change the world.
Got time for a couple of questions or comments? You guys have any? I guess I have one, which was a clarification about the Capitol Hill Scholars Program. So I think what they're actually trying to do, and forgive me if this is the way I said it, but I don't think it was exactly, is they're actually trying to not place you in like a position with a humanist group in DC or with SCA in DC. They're actually trying to get you into the offices of your legislators, because all of them have internships, and they have relationships with a few who they have been told, like, oh yeah, we'd love to have a openly humanistic, atheistic intern, but they just don't. So I think that I'm very excited by that program, and I would really love to take it off. And Jesse spent a long time, like it was one of his first jobs actually, going around trying to court students into signing up for these internships, and ended up being only two people applied for the program, I think, and we didn't have anything to do with them. So if any of you are thinking about that over the summer, I think it would be a really powerful, exciting experience.
I did actually want to ask if anybody has any ideas about ways to be politically active that I didn't mention, or potential topics for meetings that could lead to greater political activism. Brandon?
You mentioned it a little bit. I know that libertarians love the secular movement and the secular movement's outlook on religion and politics. So they're great allies, even if you might not be with them politically. We're almost always on the same page with regard to the role that religion should play in government. So I know that Young Americans for Liberty in Georgia is kind of this fringe, wild libertarian group, but they're all about kind of some of the same things we are. So seek out a group like that on your campus if you can.
Yeah, I think that in general, this doesn't really follow that. It's kind of a change of track, but the apathy in American sort of political consciousness is something that we really ought to try to concert our efforts to opposing. Free thinkers tend to be, I think, on average, more politically aware. It's purely anecdotal. It's just from conversations that I've had, but we want to translate that informedness into greater activity. Yeah.
What do you think is kind of the one collective action we could take to really let elected officials know that we're here and we vote? So what do you think like the one most effective collective action would be or would look like hypothetically?
Well, the Godless Americans March on Washington was a big statement. The problem with that kind of thing is that it's easier for politicians to write off people who protest as extremists who don't represent the mainstream. So I'm hard-pressed to think of a shining example of a clear, in a way, best way to be politically active and directly show politicians the fact and meaning of our existence. I would say that keeping your attention more on having a broad base rather than any particular approach, trying to include as many people and as much of their thought energy as possible through like letter writing and collaboration with other groups. Letter writing and lobbying. If you take a regional crew of people, if you wanted to have political action of going to lobby, and you wanted to get people from your state, just 3 or 4 free thought groups, all the interested, politically, activistically interested people to go and lobby, that certainly will make an impact, a really big-ish impact relative to these things.